So that being said, Tyler, we'll start with some takeaways from the ownership meetings, from the media appearances from Brandon Staley and Tom Telesco. Did you have one in particular that really kind of caught your eye from this earlier this week?
Yes, and maybe this is just wishful thinking or trying to create this and put this into existence, but it's this idea that the Chargers are actually comfortable with trading down and have said it both with Telesco and Staley. The quote is from Telesco: "Certainly when you're in that late first, there's probably a little bit more of a thought." Telesco added of trading back from 21. Essentially, at that point, you're taking a player that you at least have graded as a second round player. That's all really subjective, but if you can trade back a little bit and pick up and still get and maybe even the same player or close to the same player, and it's a pretty good deal to do. And then Staley later, or before I should say, echoed, "Where we're picking, it's wide open. I think in this draft, sort of later in the first round, early in the second round, there's going to be a bunch of good players there to draft. I know that Tom and I feel that way about this draft." Now, Telesco did say that there were 16 to 19 first round grades they typically have. I don't know if that's his entire tenure. I don't know if that's just the Staley era, but going into this draft, it sounds like they're going to maybe have between 16 and 19. If I'm guessing based on this class, it's closer to 16 than 19. So to me, it's one of two things. One, somebody like a Bijan Robinson, who they probably have a first round grade on, falls to them at 21. If not, they know that they're very comfortable with a lot of guys, as I think every Chargers fan is, and at least you and I are. They're comfortable trading back. And I think that, I know it's coach speak, they're probably saying all the right things anyway, but I genuinely do feel like this is the right class for that. Both of them saying the same thing at the same time, I think is notable. And I really do think that if you're Nolan Smith, Bijan Robinson, whoever they have a first round grade on is not there, I do think that they trade back. And I think that they haven't acquired enough players yet in free agency for me to say that they wouldn't do that, because I really think they're trying to bank on getting one or two more picks to really fill out the depth of their roster.
Yeah, from a pure grade perspective, like I think that part of it is definitely important to touch on. I'm not grading quarterbacks this year. Right now, I have 14 first round grades. This is a very low receiver class, and I haven't finished every like high end prospect. So maybe like a John Michael Schmitz, the center from Minnesota, kind of surprises me, and I end up putting him a first round grade on him. But for the most part, I don't think there's going to be another player that I'm going to definitely slap a first round grade on. So 14 for me, minus the quarterbacks, that kind of lines up with, like, generally speaking, where most people have this class, because obviously most people have a first round grade on the big four, if you will, in terms of quarterbacks. So, that part of this is really important, because at 21, sure, there's somebody that could drop to you. Maybe there's, like you're talking about, Bijan Robinson, Nolan Smith, because he's lighter. One of the tight ends, maybe, depending on how you feel about them, and how you feel about Dalton Kincaid's back injury, which, as I've said before, shouldn't really be that much of a concern. So there's a chance that somebody falls to you at 21 because of the four quarterbacks, and that's something that Brandon Staley talked about. But there's also a chance that all of those guys are gone, that you're talking about, at that point being into the second round grades. And this is another thing I've talked about, at least on Twitter. Like, there's not really much of a difference between player number 20 on your board and player number 40, right? Like, there's just not. And so, we've said from the beginning, like, trading down makes a lot of sense financially for this team. It makes a lot of sense from a depth perspective. Being able to get another top 100 pick would be huge. But this is really the first time I can remember that Tom Telesco has, like, openly talked about trading down this much leading into the draft. So, even at the combine, he was like, we have 7 picks right now. We might get 8 or 9. Who knows? It's like, oh, Tom Telesco talking about trading down? Like, what's going on right now? So it is notable, right? Because Tom doesn't let a lot of things slip, but this is now the second time that he's talked about trading down. So I think this is definitely important. I think it definitely is on their minds. It does take two to tango. You have to be able to convince a team, or, the board has to convince the team that they need to move up. So we'll see what ultimately happens there. But like I said, I think that it is definitely important that Tom Telesco is talking about it this openly already.
Yeah, I'd be really curious. You'll never really know. They're not going to make this decision 2 days before the draft. It's going to be literally like, pick 19, pick 20. Then somebody's going to start calling them and, seeing what they can do. So I'd be really curious who they're comfortable moving away from. Like, if Bijan Robinson is there at 21, is it more worth it to you to trade back? let someone else take Bijan, and then get Brian Branch and use a fourth on a running back, or I don't know, whatever it is. Like,
Sure.
I'm curious what is more worth it to them, taking that player or trading back. Again, we've never seen it, but this regime, the Staley regime, is all about new things that we haven't seen from Tom Telesco. And so them trading back, I think, makes a ton of sense. I don't know who's involved with their like draft analysis of who, compensation here, trading here, going back. Oh, there goes my dog. So I don't know if like Cody Shada, for example, who I believe is no longer there. I don't believe, I don't know how involved he was, but he was a big analytics guy to the head coach. So maybe things change. But to me, like looking at my board, who cares, right? But I haven't graded the tackles. I haven't graded the corners. I'm not really through all the safeties, but there's 20 something second round grades on guys sitting here.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy with a lot of like the 15 or so first guys on there in that second round range. So I think the Chargers feel the same way. I think most people in the draft feel the same way. The other thing is, though, if all of us want to trade down, we all believe that it's better to stack picks in this draft than move up. I think most teams are going to also feel that same way.
Yeah.
So it would just take like, if the Chargers don't think like Lucas Van Ness is a fit for their team, it would take something like that, like where a team would want to go up and get a player that's really good, but that is also definitely not a fit for the Chargers defense or offense specifically, something like that.
Yeah, Alex Katzen and I did the trade up video, and a lot of people did not like it, even though we were just like, running through some possibilities there. But in terms of trading down, like I think traditionally speaking, obviously people will trade up for a quarterback. That either requires a team to be, very keen on jumping the Vikings, the Ravens, who have been kind of floated as potential like Hendon Hooker options. That's a little early, in my opinion, for Hendon Hooker. I mean, like Arjun pointed out, he's going to be 25 as a rookie, and he's probably not playing from day one. So that kind of is out of the window. But what is possible, right, is the Ravens, the Vikings, the Giants, those three teams all need wide receivers, right? They've all been linked to wide receivers. And you could argue the Jaguars as well, even though they have Calvin Ridley back now, is going to be wearing number 0, which I think is fun. But trading down or trading up for a wide receiver, I think, is an important conversation here. And I know people will hate it if the Chargers trade down and whoever trades up with them is taking a wide receiver, especially if it's like Zay Flowers. But that's really like the most likely conversation there. Maybe it's a cornerback because that's another one that
That's a good point.
The Ravens, the Vikings both need a cornerback. So maybe if like Deontay Banks and Joey Porter are both on the board still, then maybe the Chargers are able to trade back a few spots and get to that point. But if you're wanting the Chargers to trade down, I think you want all of the receivers. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba has kind of done enough for him to probably go top 15.
Yeah.
But you want Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Hyatt, all on the board at that point at pick 21. And then, maybe you convince the Giants to move up a few spots and get the second receiver off of the board. And then you're sitting at pick 25 and you can, take one of the pass rushers and take one of the tight ends at that point. So a trade down scenario, I think, is definitely possible this year because the Chargers don't necessarily need a wide receiver. And that range, like 21 to 25, seems like prime Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers spots for this draft.
Yeah, it's really all about flavor, and I'm happy with either. I was going through the list of players that are probably going to be there. When we do a mock draft, it's like 10 players that I'd be happy with at 21, honestly. And even some that are projected reaches, maybe like a Darnell Washington is sort of a projected reach right now. But I'd be happy with that too. So I'm all for it. I would love for the receivers to be on the board. It would be tough, if people really want Zay Flowers, of course, they trade back, don't get Zay Flowers. But I think that I just don't believe that they're going to go for receiver in round 1. Even if they do, if you're telling me, Zay Flowers at 21 or trade back and take Hyatt, and then with the 3rd or 4th you go get Tucker Kraft or something. Sorry, sure. I'm going to go get Hyatt and Tucker Kraft all day long.